Hi there, we're going to start at uniting forces here. Mm, Uniting forces would give workers more clout to bargain with their employers. If they didn't get fair wages and safe working conditions, they could strike. In a strike, workers walked off the job and refused to go back until the company agreed to their demands. If all the workers stuck together and didn't give in, the factory had to shut down and the company owners lost money. Unions gave workers the power to bargain with employers and improve their lives. In 1902, Fanny and the other seamstresses launched Ladies Local 67 of United Garment Workers of America. Marx and Haas managers feared that the new union would strike. They agreed to nearly double the workers' wages and shorten the workday. This here is a picture of an immigrant family carrying their possessions as they arrive on a ship to America in the year 1900. All right, the next chapter. Here, quick on the left, is a photo of the United Garment Workers of America, their label, affixed inside clothing. So they would put this into the clothing so people knew that this was made by a union, which showed that then they likely had better working conditions and were paid more money for what they did. Duck was the type of fabric Fanny made into coats. The same tags for background text such as special order or duck goods. Fanny finds her voice in 1909 to 1910. Fanny managed to earn enough to feed her children and send them to school, but she never made enough money to escape poverty. Despite Marx and Haas's clothing company concessions to the labor union, the workrooms were crowded and the air was filthy. Many of the employees got sick with tuberculosis, a highly contagious, incurable disease that often became fatal. If they arrived to work even a few minutes late, as punishment, they were locked in the basement for an hour and not allowed to go to their sewing machines. Because seamstresses were paid by the number of garments they sewed each day, the last hour was precious. Company owners seemed to be on the lookout for a chance to challenge and ultimately break the garment workers' union. In 1909, they found one. A man who worked as a tailor at Marx and Haas tried to use the elevator instead of walking up 6 flights of stairs to the workroom floor. He had trouble breathing because he had suffered from tuberculosis. Although the boss had ordered the tailor to take the stairs, he refused. The boss docked him a week's pay. To protest this unfairness, Fanny and many union workers walked out of the factory. The next day, September 13, 1909, Marx and Haas locked out all 1,000 union workers and gave their jobs to non-union people. Fanny organized strikers to march in a picket line in front of the factory. They carried protest signs and tried to convince the replacement workers not to take their jobs. "Not fair," they shouted. "Scabs!" Union members used the word scab for strike breakers, people willing to cross the picket line and work during a strike. It was an insult, as if calling someone lousy or rotten. Here's 2 pictures. After an 8-week strike, the United Garment Workers of America, largely women and children, and the Clothiers Exchange agreed on abolition of subcontractors. So a 52-hour work week, time and a half for overtime, no work on 5 legal holidays, and no discrimination for strike activity. So this happened in Rochester, New York in 1913. Police arrested women for picketing during a garment workers' strike in Chicago, similar to Fanny's strike in St. Louis. Eventually, 41,000 garment workers joined the walkout in Chicago, Illinois, 1910. So many workers refused to cross the picket line, the plant nearly had to close. Marx and Haas went to court to stop the picketing. The judge agreed with the company owners and told strikers that they must stop protesting and return to the factory or they would lose their jobs. Fanny and other union leaders would be arrested if they even walked down the street by the Marx and Haas building. The workers stopped picketing but did not go back to work. The strike continued. 1 month into the labor dispute, UGWA Local 67's president died of tuberculosis, and Fanny became president. Her youngest daughter was now 12, and Fanny agreed to work for the UGWA full-time. She traveled from city to city, telling people about the low wages and unhealthy working conditions at Marks and House, and asking them to support the striking garments workers. At first, Fanny was scared when she stood on stage to speak to a crowd, but remembering the anxious faces of the hard-working girls at their sewing machines gave her strength and courage. "Help us fight," she told union coal miners during a speech in Illinois in November 1909. "We women work in factories on dangerous machinery, and many of us get horribly injured or killed. Many of your brothers die in the mines. There should be a bond of sympathy between us, for we both encounter danger in our daily work." The miners stomped their feet and shouted their agreement. Some were so moved by Fanny's speech they wiped tears from their eyes. Traveling the country for 2 years, Fanny saw workers everywhere had the same troubles: long hours, low pay, and dangerous conditions. So this here is a picture of women and girls sewing in a clothing shop, likely a smaller operation than the garment factory where Fanny worked. Speedy sewing was essential, as, like Fanny, they did piecework, meaning they were paid per piece of finished clothing. This is in St. Louis, Missouri, and the date was unknown. In December 1909, Fanny visited Chicago, where she discovered that girls in button factories worked in unheated buildings and often cut their fingers on jagged mussel shells. A cut might not seem serious, but continually reaching into tubs of dirty water for the shells, the girls risked fatal infection. At the time, there were more cases of pneumonia, typhus, and gangrene among button factory laborers than in any other industry. In Detroit cigar factories, 10-year-old boys had to stand on benches in order to reach their work. With fingers stained from tobacco, they tied wet sponges over their nostrils to block out poisonous fumes. Traveling for months, Fanny spoke at union halls across the country. She asked people to support the striking garment workers in St. Louis by buying only clothes with the Union Made label inside them. Those tags guaranteed that the workers who made those garments were treated better. Shirts and trousers without the Union label came from sweatshops like the one where Fanny had worked. This is a picture of coal miners taking a break. The boy Joseph Joe Puma, seated here, worked as a nipper, fetching and carrying the miners and learning the trade. Joe's mother said he was 14 years old. This is factory owners viewed young girls and boys as well suited in making cigars due to their small hands. Children were also more manageable, cheaper, and less likely to strike than adult workers. So the youngsters first cut the cigar wrappers to their proper length with a sharp, handleless knife that measured and formed the tobacco into bundles, which they placed in the wrappers using a special board to finally roll and seal the cigar. This was in Tampa, Florida, 1909. Newspaper advertisement showing various union labels here and urging consumers to demand that the products they buy carry one of these labels, thus promoting better wages and working conditions for laborers.